that is Laura. This is Kyle. This is He Said, She Said. Laura, happy post-Oscars.
Thank you. Yes, what a night it was. I did not stay up to watch it.
I stayed up and I didn't watch 1 ounce of it. That is not Kyle's
So,
thing.
we are going to talk about what happens when you are dating someone or full on into a relationship with someone and you observe their parenting and don't agree with it, or or they observe your parenting and don't agree with it.
I don't think that there is any divorced parent who is back in the dating world that has not experienced that. When I think about that, um, that can get dicey quickly because all of us, whether we while we say otherwise, we want to think we're really good parents, and to be told that we're not or that we're coming up short is like a big insult.
Yeah. Yeah, this one can get dicey very, very quickly. It's one of those things you don't, it's another one of those things that you don't really get until you're in that situation. You think you're going to know what you're going to do or say or how you're going to handle it, but it's tricky. And I've been on both sides, because I've been with Drew for so long and he has children and I have children. Um, I have been on the side, we've both been on the side where we have disagreed with the other person's way of handling their own parenting. And it's it's another layer of complication as to how to navigate your relationship through that because it does bring up a whole bunch of stuff.
When I was in therapy years ago, I one of the things that the therapist shared with me, and this was marriage counseling, okay? It didn't work, but at least I got this out of it. Um, there's certain things that you got to be willing to let slide, and I
Mm-hmm.
think that applies perfectly here, right? You could nitpick any parenting, any parent's parenting skills apart. You could just nitpick it apart, right? In every possible way. If for no other reason than jealousy, because they do such a
Right.
better, kids are better, I'm just going to nitpick you apart. So when it comes to that in the context of a relationship, I think that we've got to apply that principle. So there's going to be certain things that you just got to let slide. But for that to happen, you got to know what you're willing to let slide. What is
Right.
slidable and what isn't, right? It goes to the boundary thing that I always talk about. And this is a good situation. So if there's certain things that you're trying to mold in your children, you're trying to build up their character and build up, the way that they see certain things and the way they approach life. If you find that he or she is either disagrees with that, or more importantly, is trying to undermine that in any way with your children or with their own children, right? That's a problem. And you got to ask yourself, is this a deal killer or not? Because just like you can't change somebody, you can't change a parent either. They're going to
Right.
have to do that on their own.
Right.
So threatening to
Right.
leave someone because they, do something in the way they parent their kid, that's not going to get them to
I've
change.
observed in my own relationship and I've observed in others who are going through this issue. I think there's something that happens. There's a couple of things that happen. Like I know for us, when you want to be with someone, when you're making a decision about being in a relationship with someone, for me, for example, I'll use myself, I how someone approached their parenting fundamentally from a values standpoint was important for me. And if I observe parenting moments or parenting situations where I really I don't agree with him, or the opposite also holds true. If he observes that in me, you sometimes can begin to it's almost like a loss of respect. And I know it's not a complete loss of respect, but there's a moment that's like I'm not respecting the way you're handling this situation. And I've watched it happen where I've actually watched it happen to me where Drew will observe something in my parenting and he's right on. He definitely has something to teach me and educate me about because I'm big enough to know that I'm not the perfect parent and I have a lot to learn. But all of a sudden, he's looking at me with these eyes that are going, you know, I don't have that much respect for the way that you're dealing with this right now. And it's like, and it's a frustration that comes out and it's targeted at me. And I have to navigate, okay, so he's observing the situation. He doesn't really like it, but now he's kind of mad at me. And I'd rather hear what he's actually trying to say than being mad at me for not doing it the way he would have done it. And we get into this kind of conversation, and it's tricky. It's really dicey for a few minutes because it's like, if I react the wrong way, this is definitely going to blow up between us. When the truth is, most times, if he observes something in my parenting that he doesn't like, I already know it. I already don't like it myself. And I'm internalizing it, but he's now dumping a second layer of pain. I have pain around the way that I parented, and then I've got this secondary level of pain from him telling me that I didn't handle it well. And so I think these funky dynamics take place that are very tricky.
I'll tell you a story. So I'll tell you I'm going to put a long story into like a couple of sentences. So,
Okay.
well, long before I met the Queen, I was in a relationship, and I've written about this before, and I wrote about the post. The title of the post was When I Learned to Say Goodbye.
Uh-huh.
And we'd been in a relationship for about 18 months. She had two young children. Um, she was one of those single moms who you could see she parented through her guilt.
Mm.
All right? So you can imagine what direction that goes in. Quite
Never.
frankly, her children were spoiled brats, and I couldn't stand to be around them half the time. So, over the course of this relationship, I'd attempted in the best way, as strategic as I could, to give her some ideas and pointers. Time went on, things would progress, and they'd get worse, and there was no consistency. Well, I get a phone call from my ex-wife one day, out of the blue, in reference to a behavior that she had seen in my son, wanting to know where it came from. Without admitting it, I knew exactly where he had gotten it from. And it was a very bad, bad habit. And at that moment, Laura, I knew I had to make a decision. I really only had two choices, and here's how I laid it out. If I continued down the path that I went with her, after all this period of time, she had proven that she was not willing to make the hard decisions that was going to potentially remediate the problem with her child. I knew that my children were going to suffer some of the shrapnel from that when that eventually exploded. So I either had to make the decision to put my relationship with her in the rearview mirror or suffer the consequences later on, right? I think in many cases with parents dating each other, we're afraid to make that decision
Ah,
because we can't set, we think of it, well, the relationship with the person is so great, and the situation with her was fine. It was, that wasn't the issue. We tend to forget, however, that we've got these other things in play, these other planets that are in our orbit.
yep.
And a lot of times we get so caught up in the relationship itself that instead of addressing the issue and disagreeing with it and potentially trying to bring a discussion to it, right, and trying to talk about it, we'll blow it over because we don't want to affect the relationship. So we just
Right.
ignore it altogether.
Right.
But then here's what happens. You're only delaying the inevitable.
Right.
Because eventually, the thing that you disagree with today that you're ignoring will be one of the reasons why the relationship fails later.
It can be tricky. I know that I have to own some of my parenting shit. We all do. I mean, we have to own it. and it is hard to parent well, especially as a single parent, because you do feel a little bit guilty. And even if you don't, and I'm not someone who really is driven by guilt, but I am sometimes driven by the fact that I don't see my children every day. And when they're with me, I don't want all of the time with them to be this, butting heads parenting. Sometimes I just want to happily coexist, for God's sake. But the parenting shit is hard. And sometimes it means that the 3 days a week, 3.5 days a week I have my kids, it's going to be 3.5 days of parenting hell. And some days I make the choice, no, I'm letting this stuff slide because I want, a cozy few days.
Right.
And that's where it's tricky with Drew. It's tricky with someone in your life because they want to see that you are willing to do the hard work of parenting.
One of the things that what I've tried to do with her and what she tries to do with me too is where we get off the rails, and I'm bringing attention to someone about their parenting thing, is invariably we make it about the parent instead of making it about the issue.
Right.
If I can sit there and observe what the queen is doing with her children or something and see something, if I can focus it on the issue instead of focusing on what she did wrong,
right,
the response you get is a lot better than saying, do you know what you just did? Right? You got to move it away from that, right? And make it about the issue at hand. And with the understanding that as myself in her situation, I've got no dog in this hunt, Laura. I'm not the parent. I'm just simply the boyfriend who's watching this take place. I love them all three of them, and I want the best for them as well. And if I can use any experience that I've had to help that relationship, then I'm bound to do that. With the understanding, though, that at the end of the day, it's not your deal. It's not your call. It's not my call. What she does with it is left up to her.
Completely. I also think it gets tricky. Focusing on the issue is really important. Not focusing on the parent and not focusing on the kids either.
Right.
Like the kids are brats. Your kids are brats.
Yeah.
Is like you might as well have punched your girlfriend or your boyfriend out. You might as well have just sucker punched them in the face because it doesn't matter what the kids do, they're your children. That's right. So may not be happy about it. I'm not happy when my kids are bratty. I'm not happy when they're disrespectful to me. I'm not happy with that outcome. So I'm already unhappy.
And you know it, so you don't need to be reminded of it.
Well, do I mind if someone points out, hey, there's some things you might want to consider doing differently or that might help this? Yeah, I'm open. But if you pound on me or you pound on the kids, I'm going to shut down. And frankly, it's going to be really hard to turn me back on. But I'm open to feedback, and I'm open to if you have suggestions, and I only suggest that it's done with some understanding because it isn't easy. Under the best of circumstances, parenting isn't easy. And under single parenting rules, it's even more complicated. And I agree with the fact that when you observe something, you say something directly to the kids because I think that that's important. I think it's important. While you're not their father, you are somebody who loves their mother, and you're also someone who cares enough about them to be honest with them about how you feel. And I think some people get afraid to do that. And I think it's important.
One of the things that I've learned in my relationship with the Queen, I think we do a good job of it overall. A lot of this parent critique, if you will, it's about timing.
Yeah.
Okay? If you see something going down and your blood begins to boil, don't be that guy, and I'm talking to the men here, don't be that guy who gets up and says something to her right then. Give it a night. Talk to her tomorrow afternoon when things are to say, hey, you know what? I want to talk to you a little bit about what happened yesterday, kind of get your thoughts on it. Don't bring it up right then. Make it after the fact. Because what'll happen invariably is you'll bring it up then. Her emotions are already kicked into gear because of that issue. Now you're going to come in and pile your crap on top of it, and it's just going to make it worse.
Absolutely. That's the double layer shit that I was talking about. That, like, you already know when things have gone awry with your own kids. You know it. It doesn't feel good. And it's like, I'm already hanging my head in shame. I already somehow didn't have good control of this situation. And now you're going to either tell me that I suck as a parent or my kids suck. And now I just want to, hang my head and lick my wounds. But there's a lot more that can happen positively around this. It has to if you want your relationship to survive.
I think there comes a point in the relationship where if the parenting disagreements are so severe you can't overcome them, you got to be willing to walk away.
Yes.
And I got to tell you, there are very few people I've ever met that said, what happened with your relationship? Our parenting thing just wasn't going to work. I rarely have ever met men or women who said, I ended the relationship, not because me and the other person were not working, but I knew that the impact that it was having on my kids was not working.
Right.
I don't know if many people has ever done that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's sad because you take that dynamic where you've got a man and a woman who are resentful about the way they parent their children. They go ahead and get married. Where do you think that leads? Where does that end up? Unwrap that thing all the way, and then you've got a situation now where you've got a husband and wife with children who are not their own, right? So now he is not only parenting his own kids in a way that you disagree with, he's now parenting your kids in a way you disagree with. And where does that end up? It goes back to, like I said, what I've said countless times before. You've got to have hard stops, right? There's got to be certain things where this is a boundary. And the moment that you cross this boundary, there's no turning back. I'm going to have to go ahead and move on because, once again, I mean, it's back to, it's part of the interview process that we've talked about with dating, right? So, now we've got a situation, well, how is he parenting his own children, knowing that if marriage is the end result of this, he's going to be a stepfather.
Correct.
He's going to be their dad when he's with them. So you're going to have to take that measuring tape out, lay it against him and see where he measures up as to the way that you want to parent your children. And if he doesn't measure up, don't think that getting married is going to change it. And surely don't convince yourself and mislead yourself in thinking that, well, I can get him to do it that way. You're kidding yourself.
And I think that the one other thing that sometimes we forget is that this parenting thing is not just about little kids, right? This parenting thing is about, as they get older, role modeling what we want our children to grow into. I have 2 boys. I want them to grow into the kind of men that I hope that they will become. And because of that, it's not just about putting down the toilet seat and saying please and thank you and clearing their dishes. It's really about bringing people into their world that will continue to support them and model for them being the kind of man that I hope that they will grow into. And I think that that's important because we forget sometimes that we think it's just about the little kids, but this is also, they are observing all of it. And when you look at someone, you want to look at them through that lens.
I'll tell you this, Laura, and I'm speaking directly to you with your 2 sons. The best thing that Drew can do to build a healthy respect for your 2 boys for him is to show his undying support for you.
Exactly.
If they see him supporting you, right, like a man should support a woman, there's nothing else he can say that will go as far to creating the type of men you want your sons to be than watching his mother's lover, boyfriend, partner, whatever you want to define him as, doing that very thing.
I could not agree more.
And I will tell you, most divorced dads who are dating moms or men who are dating moms, that is not even on their radar. They don't even get it. It's not even something that they register with. And as a result of that, the son will always show disrespect to the mom because the dad or the boyfriend's not there to stand up and say, "That's not the way you're going to do things. Not while I'm around here."
That's absolutely correct.
And this is not about, well, you're not my dad. No, I'm not your dad. But I love your mother, and I'm not going to see you talking to her that way.
That's right.
Guys don't do that.
That's exactly correct.
And the boy who's observing that will send a message to him that Drew could never say. He can never speak as powerfully as when he can act.
And you know what? I'll tell you, I'll take it one step further. I choose to be in a relationship where I can be the kind of woman that I hope my children, well, the kind of woman within the context of an intimate and loving relationship that I hope my children, my boys, my young men will seek to achieve in their own, loving relationships as they get older. I take that piece very as seriously as I did when I made sure that they had organic smashed peas going into their mouth. Seriously, I think we forget that piece sometimes. Parents, especially single parents, you're dating, you're this, you're that, you forget to remember how important that part of the role modeling and parenting piece is.
Final thoughts.
Final thoughts is, wow, I don't even know what my final thought is. We had so many things. I think it is, in the context of this parenting blending thing, it is to deal with things as you said, not at that very moment, not at the hottest moment, but to be honest and to be open and to be compassionate about it, because it's very emotional. It's a very emotional thing.
We should approach, a father and a mother should approach a relationship with someone else as from the same perspective that they would themselves. Is he the right person? Is he going to love me the way that I want to be loved? You got to be asking, is he going to be the type of father I want him to be? Is he going to be a man who is going to lead my children? Is he going to be a man who is going to be the father when they're not with their dad? If we aren't asking those questions before we go into the relationship and when we're in it, then we're not going to see those gaps. And then when that man or that woman becomes the stepmom or the stepdad, all the cracks that you chose to ignore or didn't pay attention to before now become huge gulfs, and you don't ever get beyond them.
And not just are they going to be the kind of father when they're with my kid, but are they always going to support me? Is my girlfriend, the woman I'm with, always going to support me to be the best father I can be, and vice versa? Absolutely. So important.
Couldn't have said it better. Laura, have a great week.
Bye.